All right, based on the me going over the tests, I've decided to change around the order in which we're doing things this week. All right, what we're going to do first today is I'm going to go in before your very eyes, and I'd like you to do it, especially if you didn't do well on the test. I'm going to rewrite part 1 of the test. I don't want it's too much to throw at you at one time. So I'm going to go through part 1. Then we're very quickly going to have an overview of chapter 13. Chapter 13, just so you know, first of all, I'm not going to give you another hands-on test. All right? In fact, I think you're done with tests probably for the rest of the semester. All right. I'm going to lecture on chapter 13. There will not be a written test either. I don't like the chapter. All right. So we will go over a couple problems from chapter 13. I rewrote one of the ones that were in the book because I didn't like it, and another one I just did myself. So from the end of the chapter. So we'll go over that. Tomorrow you'll have the written test on chapter 12, which was actually supposed to be today. That's on controls. Then we will go over the second part of the test. I don't know how long that'll take. All right. What I'm going to attempt to do, at least for part of the period on Wednesday, is kind of go over everything we've done. All right. And then whatever time is left, there'll be lab. Thursday, I'll lecture on chapter 14, and we'll go through a couple problems. That's on file handling. And Friday, we'll have the written test on 14 when you come in. The rest of the period will be lab. So 2 weeks from today, remember, not this week, but next week is spring break, so there's no classes. All right. But on the 19th, we'll begin the database part of the class. All right. So what I'm going to do, and what I'd like you to do now, if you did well on the test, you probably know whether or not you did well. Or if you think, well, I understood it, etc. And some of you did real well on the first part of the test and then did almost nothing for the second part of the test. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewrite the first part of the test right now. So if you had problems, follow along, create it yourselves. So I'm just going to come in here and I'm going to start up a new project. It's going to be a console application, and I'm going to call it bank account. Just bank account is fine. All right. Again, if you think, well, I understood this, then don't do it. All right. This is the last time that we're going to talk about object-oriented programming for this semester. But for lack of better words, the subject will rear its ugly head again next semester and the following semester. All right. Okay. So I've got this thing called bank account. I'm just going to create it on my desktop. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is. Let's see. There we go. All right, so I've got this to begin with. All right. Now, this has got my main in it, so as you'd guess, in main, I'm going to do the using static system.console. All right. And for the rest of it, I'm going to go back and write main when we're all done. That should make sense to you because, again, main is designed to be our driver. All right, so we'll do that last. So what I want to do, I call this thing bank account. I'm going to right mouse click on the name of the project, choose add, choose new item, and this one is supposed to be bank account 1. I guess I did it backwards, but that's fine. We'll call this bank account 1. All right, so I've got that. So that's my new class. Make that a little smaller. All right. Now, I'm going to do this a little bit out of order in that I'm not going to follow all the steps that are in here. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write it the way you probably or I probably would write it. And that is, the first thing I want to do in here is I want to declare and initialize the program constants. Now, even if you struggled with this test, there should be, I had 5 constants. There should be nothing in these constants that should surprise you. All right? Now, as always, I'm asking you the question, is there anything right there that doesn't make sense to anyone? What I want to be able to do is, if there is no first name, I want to set it to this. If there is no last name, I want to set it to this. I want to make sure the account number falls between this, and if there is no initial balance, I want to set it to this. Does all that make sense? All right, so those are my constants. So the next thing I want to do is I want to declare my program instance variables. That means that each instance, all right, each instance of this is going to have, so each bank account, whatever you want to call it, okay? All right. Whatever you want to call it, you know, everybody is going to have what? They're going to have a first name, they're going to have a last name, they're going to have an account number, and they're going to have an initial balance. I also had one that I added, which was called current balance. All right. So again, I asked the same question I asked before. Is there anything that's in there that does not make sense? So every single person who has an account will have a first name, a last name, an account number, an initial balance, and a current balance. So I walk into the bank, I say I want to open up an account, whatever. And they say, what's your first name? Jeff. What's your last name? Scott. They give me an account number. I give them an initial balance. That initial balance becomes my current balance. Make sense? All right. So what have we done so far? Well, from the test, we were told, you know, I don't care about calling your folder or something. Create a bank account class with the following instance variables. So we have those. That was 5 points right there on the test. All right. So the next thing we were supposed to do was to create 2 constructors. So I'm going to have here my no-arg constructor. So again, that's a constructor that gets put in when there are no arguments added. So I just say here public, what was this? And it's bank account 1. That was nice. All right. So again, this is the case where I would have absolutely nothing. So I'm going to create a brand new bank account object with nothing passed in. So in other words, now I have to set all those fields. All right, so first thing I did was I came in here and I said rand equal new random. Some of you didn't put that in. Maybe you didn't understand it. I don't know. I didn't think that was going to be hard because all you would have had to have done would be to say Google, Google a random number in C#. All right. So So again, that is saying that if I come in here and I create a brand new bank account object and I pass in nothing, their first name is going to be this, which is UFN. Their last name is going to be this, which is going to be ULN. Their account number will be generated for them automatically, and it'll be between 1,000 and 10,000. Their initial balance will be 25, which will also be their current balance. All right. Again, any questions on that? All right. Then we have our, for lack of better words, I call the full arg constructor. And that's the case when we've got a bank account and we are passing in a string for the first name, a string for the last name, an integer for the account number, and a double for the initial balance. All right, we were not told on here, although some of you did, and it's fine, but we were not told on here to do any validation at all. That was for the second part. All right, so So again, you see the no-arg constructor where we have to generate everything as opposed to the full arg constructor where we've got everything passed in. Are there any questions between the two of those? So far that was number 1, number 2A, and number 2B. So that was 10 points right there of the test. All right. So the next thing that we were supposed to do was to create setters and getters for each of the variables above. Validate each field and that the field name could not be blank for the first name or last name. The account number must be within range, and the initial balance must be at least $25. All right. Again, the order in which you do these doesn't matter, but I just did them in this order. I did my first name getter and setter, then my last name getter and setter, then my account number getter and setter, then my initial balance getter and setter. Again, hopefully that makes sense to everyone. All right. Now, we were told to, in this case, to not allow a last name a first name to be blank. Now, I'm going to type this in. Please don't type what I'm doing right now. There's two ways that you can do this. You can either say first name equal value equal nothing, bless you. And if that's the case, now that's one way that you can do it. That literally says if the value had nothing passed into it, take the default and set it to first name. Otherwise, take the value and set it to the first name. So you can either do it like that, or, and I'll just comment this out, what a lot of people did, which was fine, they wrote it like this. If first name equal nothing, I'm sorry, that's wrong. If value equal nothing, first name equal so either one of those would work. I chose the first way because it's only one line of code as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines of code. If doing it the second way is easier for you to understand, then do it that way. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncomment this, because that's the way that I did it, and I'm going to comment out this. But again, either way was okay. As you'd probably guess, if you were a professional programmer, you would do it the first way because it's a lot less code. All right? Now, just because I don't want to spend a year and a half doing this here, I'm going to take everything that we just did, everything, and I'm going to copy it to the clipboard, come down here and paste it in, and then just change this from first name to last name. So that would end up becoming the getter and the setter for the last name. So what's left? Well, we've got a getter and we've got a setter for the account number. We've got a getter and we've got a setter for the initial balance. And then we've got our withdrawal and our deposit methods. All right? So again, I asked the same question. Is there anything that's in there that does not make sense to people? Again, this is your chance to ask. All right. I'm going to have to make some changes here, but I'm going to copy this in again. Like I said, I'm going to have to make massive changes in here because it's not the same kind of field, but that's fine. So this will be, instead of last name, this will be account number, getter setter, and that's an int. I'm just going to get rid of all of this that's in there and rewrite it from scratch. So if the value is okay, so if it's greater than or equal to the min account number, and I'm just going to put it on 2 lines so you can read it, and the value is less than or equal to the max account number, well, again, you should all know this. That means it was a valid value. It means we put in something that was between 1,000 and 10,000. All right, so if that's the case, and I know it's valid, well, then everything's cool. So that account number equal value. All right. Now, if it's not, then we know, I think you'd all agree with this, we know then that something invalid is in there. In other words, there's something in there that is not within the range. All right, well, if you look up above, remember this? Way up on top here, in our how we did this? We did that line, and we did that line. I'm just going to copy those 2 lines in again. Now, please look up on the screen here. Probably a cleaner way to do it than this would have been this line right here, random rand. I only really need to do that once for each program run. So I really could have taken it and removed it from there and put it up here. Because then if I did that, I wouldn't need to put it in again down here. All right. That after a while, that's kind of like when somebody gets done, you know, you've had this before, I'm sure, in your written communications class, you had to write a paper. And you get done, and now you start looking at it. I could change this word. I could change this word. You know, it's even called wordsmithing. Well, I'm program smithing right now. Either one of those ways would be okay. All right. So that's everything for the account number. I'm going to take it and copy it one more time. And again, this will now become my initial balance, which, as you know, is a double. All right. But again, okay, the first thing I want to check was, did we put in an initial balance that was greater than or equal to our minimum, which was 25, right? All right, I think that's what we set up here. Min init balance, or init bal is 25. All right. So, if the value is greater than or equal to the min init val, then the init val is equal to the value. It was valid. Otherwise, that's it. Now again, some of you did very well on the test and may not have exactly written it the way that I wrote it, and that's okay. But again, I'm asking you the question, is there anything we've gone over so far that doesn't make sense to you? So what I'm going to do very quickly, we're almost done here, but I'm going to very quickly just leave a screenshot up here, so if you do decide you want to go back later and watch this, and if you don't, you don't. All right, but if you say, I'd like to go back and hopefully understand everything we've done, so there's our program constants. There are our program instance variables. There is our no-arg constructor, where again, we are setting the account number to a random number between 1,000 and 10,000. There is our full arg constructor. Which again, you were not told to do any kind of validation on here. All right? And sometimes people will ask me now, well, you didn't tell us to do this, but I wanted to do it anyway. Is that okay? You know, I'm not trying to be funny here. I'm really not. But if you say, you only asked for this much work and I did that, but I also did this much, is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. But one thing that you have to realize, okay? One thing that you have to realize is if I ask you to do A, and you say, I'm going to do A, but I'm also going to do B, C, and D, that if you do B, C, and D wrong, and it affects A, then I have to take off. Does that make sense? And it's not like I'm giving you extra credit for doing more than you were asked to do. All right? So again, I made it small, but there's the getter, just return the first name. There's the setter, which you can do either one of these ways. Either one would be sufficient. Again, I picked the first way and I commented out the second way. Then I copied everything from my first name getter setter to my last name getter setter because it was virtually the same thing, except we had to change where it said first name, we had to change it to last name. But other than that, it was virtually the same exact method as the same exact getters and setters that we had for the first name. All right, then we've got the account number. Again, our gets are pretty much set here. And for the set, if it's greater than or equal to 1,000 and it's less than or equal to 10,000, we know then it's within range. All right, so we set it. Otherwise, we just set it to something that is within range. Does all that make sense? Then we went down to our initial balance. We had to change the type. Was an int for our account number. It's a double now. For the getter, nothing special. For the setter, if our initial balance was greater than or equal to 25, it's good. Otherwise, we just set it to 25. All right? So that's where we are right now, which means that we've got two things left to do. Technically three things. But we've got our deposit method and we've got our withdrawal method. Okay? So, These methods are very similar to one another, but not identical because, as you know, when you deposit money, it's not the same thing as you withdrawing money, unfortunately. All right. So what do we want to do here? I just created a constant. You didn't have to do this. But I said min amount equals 0. Technically, you could walk, whoops, const double, sorry. Double. All right. Technically, you could walk into a bank and say, I want to deposit something, and if they said how much, you could say nothing. That would be stupid, but technically you could do it. All right. So I said if that amount is greater than the min amount, meaning that you want to put in something that's positive, well, what do we have to do? All right. What do we have to do? Think about this here. All right. We've got an initial balance, right? Everybody with me? That was our initial balance, etc. And look, when we set everything, when we came up here, our initial balance, we set our current balance to that. Okay, we came down here, and with our initial balance, we set our current balance to that. All right? And then we came in and we did our first name, we did our last name, we did our account number, and we did our initial balance. All that stuff is initial balance, right? That's it. All right? But now we have to check our current balance. Why? Because, well, we just added an amount. So our current balance plus equals that amount. And you got to spell it right. So the current balance is upped by that. Now, you could have done different things in here. All right. I just decided for this first example that's right here, I just was going to put a right line in here that basically said it worked. All right. You didn't have to do that. You weren't asked to do that. But I came in here and I said right line. I'm probably going to get an error because I don't probably have the, I don't have the using statement. So using static system.console. All right, so that should now, that right line should be okay. And it is. All right. And I just said successfully deposited well, what? The amount. And I might as well put it in currency format. All right. So I said that. And after I said that, again, it's not that you had to do it like this. This is how I did it. So I came back here and I said, new balance is, and I could have said current balance there. It really doesn't matter. And again, I'm going to run out of room on here, so put it on yet another line. My question to you is, again, please take a look at this. Is there anything that's in there that doesn't make sense to you? If the amount you attempted to deposit was greater than 0, then your current balance has to be updated by that amount. Then we just said we successfully deposited that amount, all right, and our current balance is now this. So we're letting the user know their running balance. All right, here's my question for you. What goes in here? I don't mean what code. What if I get in here, what happened? You entered 0 or below. It was an illegal attempt at a deposit. All right? So all I did was I did another write line where I said invalid, and I did spell mine right. Deposit must be positive. So again, sorry to sound like the same broken record. Is there anything in there that does not make sense to you?
So it says public void deposit double amount. Where does that double amount?
What that means is when you call the deposit method, you'll have to pass a value into it. All right? Did you have to do it that way? There's other ways it could have been done. One thing, hopefully you've noticed this, that one of the biggest differences between writing a program that is a console versus writing a GUI is usually a console program is much less interactive. It's not that you can't write an interactive console program. We have. But a GUI program basically has to be interactive. All right. So we came in here and we wrote the deposit. So what's left is the withdrawal. All right, so we did the deposit method. So now I want to come in here and I want to do the withdrawal method. And this, in my opinion at least, is even easier. Now, when you look at this one, here we expected the best. We said if it was okay, run with it. And if it was not okay, give us an error. When I did this one, for whatever reason, I did it backwards. So I said if the amount is less than or equal to the minimum initial balance, why did I say that? No, you can withdraw less than 25 bucks. I don't know why I said that. All right, if, what's the big thing? Well, what we want to do is we want to check and we want to see if you took that amount away, would you have at least 25 bucks? Does that make sense? And again, there are several ways you can do this. I came in and created a variable just called temp that I set equal to 0. You didn't have to do this. But I said here, if the amount minus, if the current balance minus that amount, all right, if it's less than the min init balance, okay, if it's less than 25, we're not going to allow it. Does that make sense? And I don't know why I've got that temp in there because I never used it. All right. So if our current balance, if we go and attempt to withdraw that amount, And if that amount that we just attempted to withdraw is less than 25, we don't want to allow it. All right, so I just came in here and said, I put in a right line that said, withdrawal denied. Value come on. Let's put that on line 2. So if we attempt to do this, all right, if we attempt to do this, and it has us go below 25, we'll get a message back that says withdrawal denied, balance cannot fall below $25. All right? But if I hit the else here, well, that should make sense to you. I can take the money out and I still have $25 or more. So now it's okay to do. And I'm going to grab what I did up here where I said this successfully deposited. Now I'm going to just have it say successful withdrawal. Okay. And again, those of you who got this right wrote this in different ways, which is just fine. All right? So taking it from, not from the top, but let's just look at the last two methods. Here was the deposit method. All right? If we attempted to deposit more than nothing, we took it. Now, we could have a maximum deposit, but again, I don't think if anybody walks in, somebody wins the lottery and walks in and wants to deposit $500 million, the bank isn't going to say no. Probably going to give them a chair and ask them if they want any food. All right? So if it was valid, we have to update our current balance. We have to let the user know that it was successfully deposited and tell them what their new balance is. Otherwise, we know that it didn't work. So we just said invalid, deposit must be positive, period. All right? Then for the withdrawal, if the current balance minus that amount, just to be sure, I probably should put that in parentheses to make sure that happens first. All right? So if that current balance minus the amount is less than 25, we deny it with just that message. Otherwise, if we get to the else, it did work. So we take the current balance and remove that amount from it. Tell them that they successfully withdrew that. Any questions on any of this? All right, because now I'm going to go back and I'm going to write the driver. All right, so let me save. Probably not a bad time. Go back into here. All right. So first thing I'm going to do, check the no-arg constructor. All right. So bank account, BA, no R constructor, that's what it is, equals new, and I'm sorry, it's bank account 1 because of what I called it stupidly. All right. Now, I'm going to show you both ways, okay? What I did for the first one in here, because some of you I knew were going to do it this way, what I did was I wrote another method in here that just was called display info. All right? And all I put in there was basically a bunch of right lines, but we'll put that in just a minute, okay? So, display info for bank account for that person. Now, I'm going to write this in just a minute, but please, just stop for a second and look on the screen. What I want you to get out of this is when this line takes place, the system immediately jumps over to here and attempts to find a no-R constructor. And it does, right there. So what should happen is the first name should now be UFN, the last name should now be ULN, the account number should be a random number between 1,000 and 10,000, the initial balance should be 25, and the current balance should be 25. Does all that make sense? That's what should happen right here. All right? So that's basically what I ended up putting in here. So that should show the person's first name and their last name. All right. So what's left? The account number. Guess I could pretty this up a bit. And all I put here was just the current balance. I mean, I'm not that concerned with what they entered to begin with. Boy, oh boy. In fact, I guess, I don't know if I can get to that current balance. We'll just say initial deposit. Or maybe we're saying nothing. Let's take a quick look here. Now, you know this as well as I do, that even though this will work the way it is, we can make it a little prettier, for lack of better words. And what I mean by that is that account number should really have a dot to string set up with it, really should. And so should this. Not only that, this really should be probably currency. Some of you totally followed the instructions and rewrote, did an override on toString in the other class. I'm going to do that with the when we go over tomorrow. All right. So let's see if what I've done so far works. So I'm going to save this and run it. And of course, it's going to go right off the screen because I didn't put a read line in there. There it is. So that all looks okay. As far as I can tell, that all looks okay. All right? Now, I want to come in and I want to test all, I want to come in here and I want to test all of my getters and setters in here. So I'm going to come in and say, I already have a valid account number. Okay, so what else do we have in here? Well, we can try to add something. How about let's try to do a deposit. Let's just put in something that's valid, okay? $100. And while we're at it, let's do a withdrawal. And we'll just take out $25. And then let's write it up again. So I'm going to grab this thing right here. All right. So those are just values I just made up right now. So there was the first one. All right, successfully deposited $100. New balance is $125. That was actually written. These two were written in the class, and then so was that. Withdrew $25. New balance is, all right, $25. There it is, and there it is. I don't have the current balance because of the way I wrote this, but the current balance is shown right there. I really don't need to write the initial balance in here, but it worked. All right. So the other thing that I want to do to test this then is I want to come in and I've already now written a bank account object with nothing in it. I made sure that that worked. That was all cool. So now I want to go and test the other one. So I'm going to say and I'm going to run out of room, so I'm just going to do it here. And let's put in a number that is not valid. Everybody hear me? So I'm going to put in 1. And let's put in an initial balance that's also not valid. All right, so we'll put in -100. All right. Notice I didn't get any errors. Those are both that's a valid int and a valid double. Does everybody understand though? That should be the first name, that should be the last name. This should be changed to a valid account number between 1,000 and 10,000. This should be changed to 25 when we print all that out. Does that make sense? Let's see if it works. That was our first person, and there it is. Okay, now I'm looking at it. Whoops, something's screwed up. So I know I'm going to have to go back and fix that, right? There's got to be a problem. I already can tell you what the problem is. Problem is what I told you before, and that is, what didn't we do in here? We did not do, all right, we did not do any checks. In other words, we didn't check in here to see if the person had nothing in their first name. We didn't check to see if they had nothing in their last name. We didn't check to see if their account number was valid or not in here. We could put that in. All right? So I could put the same kind of statements that we had in here. This is one place I don't like the way that it's done in this language. What you're going to see in Java is a much easier way to do it when we get there in a year. But I could come in here and say this. If AN is greater than or equal to what? The min account number, and AN is greater than, is less than or equal to the max account number, then I know what's within range. All right, so I could come in here and say that. Else, we already have that code in there for the else, someplace else. No pun intended, but that's right there. So look at what we did. We came in and we said, if the account number passed in was within range, accept it. Otherwise, generate a valid one. So now, with that in there, let me save this and run it again. Now let's see. Now you see she's got a valid account number. See that? I love that when I screw up and it allows me to show something. All right. So let's do one more where we'll check the same thing, but we'll do it for the balance. So again, if that initial balance you passed in, if it was greater than or equal to the minimum initial balance, all right, so if it was greater than or equal to 25, accept it. Then it's cool. Else, set it to 25. All right? Let's see if that works. There it is. Now, every time we run this, the person's going to have a different account number, right? That's kind of bad, but it still is fine. So my question is, looking at these, this, we could have even checked in here for nothing. We could have done that, all right? Because right now, if we pass in nothing, it's going to accept nothing. Everybody hear that? If we pass in double quote, double quote, double quote, double quote, their first name will be double quote, and their last name, will be nothing. They'll both be the empty string. So we could have checked in here. I didn't do that, but we could have. All right, so that checked the account number, and then that checked the initial balance. All right, so now we can come back in here, and we can make some changes to this one. And let's just do, we'll do a deposit. Let's do an illegal deposit, -100. And then let's do a legal deposit of +100. And then let's do a negative, a withdrawal, and we'll try to withdraw $1 million. They don't have that much in their account, so that should fail. And then let's try doing another one where they just try to withdraw $50. All right? And again, let's just see what happens when we do this. First one, second one, third one. There's a whoop, and of course I don't have a read line in there. Some reason with the read line it just blew up. So I'm going to come in here, and where I've got all these bad things, I'm going to stick another read line in there, so it doesn't just go right off the screen. Invalid. Must be positive. Looks good to me. Successfully deposited, 100. Now there's 125. Withdrawal denied. Balance cannot fall below $25. And then we have the successful withdrawal. All right. I'm going to probably have to end up putting a bunch of read lines in here. Maybe you noticed that, those of you who got it done and got it to work. If you want your stuff to show, so invalid, successful, successfully withdrew, new balance, boom, I'm done. Any questions on this? No, I don't want to print out copies. All right. Again, if you want to go back and take a look at it, then you can go back and watch the tape or whatever. So really aren't that long. This morning I screwed up and I had to reset my defaults, and the default in here is to not have line numbers. So I've lost my line numbers. Try to remember where that is. Tools, options, text editor. Tools, options. Tools, options. Text editor. General. All languages. Oh, what line numbers? There we go. There they are. All right. So not really a real big main, less than 50 lines, and the program itself was bigger. All right. But again, if I pull out all these lines that were here, it's going to go down quite a bit too. All right. Any questions on this first one? All right. Then let's take a break. It's 9:09. We'll take 15. So come back at 9:25, please. You're going to see your grades. I've got them in just a second. I haven't put them in the inside ranking yet.